Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Pastor's Heart. The Bible tells us that God created us to walk in community. Think about it. He places us in the body of Christ. He puts us in the family of God. The Bible tells us that a cord of three strands is not easily broken, and that as iron sharpens iron, we're to spur each other on to love and good works. Well, it's I find it's easy, especially for Americans, to think that that we have this rugged individualism. I can do it on my own. I don't need no stinking friends. And I was kind of thinking about that this last week or so, and I was reminded of a Tuesday morning back in 2001. Many of you probably can remember where you were on that day, September 11th, 2001. I was in my office. I would meet with 10 pastors. We met every Tuesday, and we met for about 12 years. And we pastors would come and go, but for the most part, we had a core group of people that would meet to pray every week, and we ran the gambit. We had Methodists, so we had a Presbyterian, we had Disciples of Christ, Independent Christian Church, Charismatic Mennonite. I mean, you name it, we had that group of people. And now we differed on many things theologically, but we all love the Lord, and we all had a passion for our community. And I can remember that Tuesday, we were meeting at our church and in our coffee shop, the Solid Rock Cafe. And Marcia, the Presbyterian pastor, came in, and she was running a little late, which was pretty normal for her. And she said, "Hey, have you guys heard the news?" And of course we hadn't, because we'd all been there. And she said a plane had just crashed in the World Trade Center. And so I immediately went over to the TV there in the coffee shop, and I turned it on, and we started to watch the news. And we were horrified as we were living in real time, what was happening throughout our country. And somewhere in just the disbelief, I think it was Phil, said, "Guys, we need to pray, and we need to do something, because our community is going to be hurting." And so we went down to the office, and we began to pray, and it was a surreal time. I mean, we had people who, we didn't know what to pray. We didn't know what to do. That we knew that we were going to have to address this with our communities that day, sooner rather than later. And so we had pretty much decided that we were going to do an outdoor service out at the courthouse later on that afternoon, but we really didn't have a whole lot to give at that point. And so different people would pray, and they're pouring out their hearts to the Lord for our community and for our country, and even we had no idea what that was going to unleash in the world, but we knew it wasn't going to be good. And then one of the pastors, Michael Little, Michael was he was a character. He still is a character. He was a pastor of Virgie Christian Church, and Michael began to pray, and in a way that only he could. Michael's one of the smartest guys I know. He's knows his Bible better than almost anybody I know. But he began to pray, and he started out and just looking at the fact that before creation was here, when there was nothing, God was there. And then he started talking about the fact that when as the world was being put together, and as the light was formed and the dry ground came out, God was there. And then he talked about the fact that when sin entered the world, and when Adam and Eve gave in to that temptation to decide for themselves what was right and wrong, and they were confronted, God was there. And throughout, and then he began to systematically walk through the timeline of humanity. And he mentioned the fact that when Abraham didn't know what to do when he was called on to sacrifice his son, God, you were there. And when the children of Israel were facing the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh's army behind them, God, you were there. And so as Michael began to pray through that, we all began to realize that, okay, this is, there's something happening here. And he would finish something in the timeline of human history. And then as he would say, and God, you were there, we would all begin to join him with that. And we would say, and God, you were there. And the part that was amazing to me was that you could sense and you could feel the faith that was growing in that room. Not because of any magical, formula. It was the acknowledgement that no matter what we did, no matter what happened throughout human history, there was never a time when God was not there. There was never a time that God did not have humanity under control and this creation under control. And no, we don't always understand what's going on, but we do know that God is there, that God is there in the difficult times, because we live in a sin-sick world, that we're all of us become are tainted in some way with sin, whether it's somebody else's sin, even our own sin. But God is still there. God is still there to pick up the pieces. God is still there to give us hope. God is still there to walk beside us through his Spirit. And that as he was praying, and as God was bolstering our faith, and as we were proclaiming the truth that God was there, we knew that when we left that place that we had a purpose. And we did have a phenomenal service that afternoon. And but there was something that happened in our community that we grew a little closer, but not just because of the tragedy that took place, but because of the acknowledgement of the fact that God was there, that God was there in our community. God was there in these pastors of various and sundry churches coming together and saying that, okay, we need to bring out one united front, that there is a God who loves us. And it's amazing at how God can use our personalities. I said the only person that I know of that could have pulled that off was the one guy who didn't try to pull it off, who was just Michael being Michael, and interacting with God and encouraging us. And so what I would like to do, I just like to encourage you that God has created you to be you. That he has given you your personality, he has given you your quirks and your foibles and everything else. And he's done that because he wants to use you to encourage others and to make a difference in your sphere of influence. And it's so easy for us to try to be somebody else, to try to fit in, to get along. But I'm thinking about the fact that in that day, the day that we needed God the most, he was able to show us who he was and his goodness through a pastor who was working through his personality. And in doing so, he encouraged us in a way that I don't think anybody else could. And so as you are being who you are, recognize the fact that God can use you to encourage others, because you can show off Jesus in a way that nobody else can. And I'm always amazed as a pastor as I look out on Sunday mornings and I see the people sitting in the chairs or the pews, whatever you have. Each person that's there is a unique displayer of the glory of God. And we can celebrate that. We can come alongside. We can encourage folks to be a better displayer of the glory of God, but to use the personality that God has given them. So I hope that you're encouraged by that. I hope that you will remember that God made you as a masterpiece of his, that you were created to display the goodness of God, the glory of God, as you work out the works that he has prepared in advance that you would do. And that you are able to not only display his glory, but you're able to partner with him as he pours out his grace. So I pray that you have a wonderful week, rest of the week, weekend. I pray that you would have a wonderful time in worship with your family and friends this weekend. And I look forward to seeing you in a future video. God bless you all.